evening, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight's virtual public meeting. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes and then we'll get started in a bit with our presentation. In the event that you're having any technical issues regarding the presentation today, we ask that you contact Miranda Brito at 786-537-3363. And Miranda can also be emailed at miranda@iscgroup.com. She'll be able to assist you with any issues that you may be having. And just give us a few more minutes and we'll get started shortly. Thank you. Good evening once again, everyone. My name is Paulette Summers. I am the Community Outreach Specialist for this State Road 5 Overseas Highway from south of Tollgate Boulevard to Lignumvitae Channel Roadway Improvement Project. I'd like to welcome you all to our virtual public meeting this afternoon. And at this time, we'd like to take some time to acknowledge any elected or appointed officials that may be on the call tonight. If you just go ahead and use the raise your hand button on your control panel on the right, we'll go ahead and acknowledge you. Okay, doesn't appear that we have any elected officials or appointed officials with us. Any representatives from those offices? All right, I'm not seeing any representatives from those offices at this time. So again, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our virtual public meeting today. And we're going to go ahead and get started. If you are having any technical difficulties, again, feel free to contact Miranda Brito at 786-537-3363, or you may email her at miranda@iscprgroup.com. She'd be happy to assist you with any technical difficulties that you may be having or experiencing prior to and during our presentation tonight. I'm just going to go ahead and this is our meeting agenda. Here are tonight's virtual public meeting agenda items. Before we get started, we're going to be going over the rules of engagement during this meeting today. We're going to be meeting our project team. We're going to be discussing some non-discrimination policy matters. We're going to be going over our project location, schedule, the cost, as well as our scope items as it relates to this project. We're going to talk about what you need to expect, and then we're also going to be going over our maintenance of traffic plans. This will be followed by some questions and answers towards the tail end of this meeting. So before we get started, I'm going to share a few items regarding the virtual public meeting format today. On your computer or device, you may see in the upper right-hand corner something that looks similar to this. If you are calling in, there's a phone call prompt that you can go ahead and select should you need to call in. To listen to the meeting on your computer or device, speakers are selected by default, just so that you'll know. If you prefer to listen by phone, select phone call or telephone in the audio pane of the control panel and dial in using the information displayed. Now, attendees will remain muted throughout the meeting, except for the open discussion session. Use your raise hand button on your GoToWebinar panel, which is what I just described to you, to provide a comment. You may first provide your full name, followed by your address, and then your comment. Attendees are welcome to submit questions, comments using the GoToWebinar question panel, and members of the team will respond during the open discussion portion of this meeting. Participants will have roughly 3 minutes to answer questions and provide comments. Now, this meeting is being recorded. The meeting will begin, as I said, with a presentation followed by comments and questions. If you're calling, however, by cell phone or phone, you will not be able to provide your comments during the meeting. To provide your comments, please call 786-537-3363 or email miranda@iscprgroup.com. Tonight's presentation is also available available at the fdotmonroe.com website. And the project team will remain until 7 p.m. tonight so that we can answer any questions or concerns that you may have. But we will be here until the end of tonight's meeting. And with that, I would like to ask my project team members to turn on their cameras so that they may be acknowledged. Team? First, we have our FDOT project manager, Humberto Gomez. Humberto.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Humberto. Followed by our consultant project manager, Fabio Laverde.
Good evening, everyone. Fabio Laverde with Trace Consultants.
Thank you, Fabio. Our consultant project engineer is Diego Espieta.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Diego. And then our consultant drainage engineer is Miss Eileen Costa. Eileen?
Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. At this time, the Florida Department of Transportation is required to comply with various non-discrimination laws and regulations, including the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Public participation at this meeting is solicited without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. Persons wishing to express their concerns about the Title VI may do so by contacting the District 6 Title VI Coordinator, Nicholas Danu, at 305-470-5219, or you may email Nicholas at FDOT 1000 Northwest 111 Avenue, Miami, Florida 33172. Our state Title VI coordinator is Jacqueline Paramore. You may reach Jacqueline at 850-414-4753 or in writing at the Equal Opportunity Office, 605 Swaney Street, MS 65, Tallahassee, Florida 32399. And I understand that we have some elected officials present on the meeting today. David Webb and Mr. Mark Gregg had acknowledged themselves. Okay, and it looks like we also have Mayor Michelle Coldiron that's also present too as well. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you for attending today, and we look forward to hearing your comments towards the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for coming. And with that being said, I'm going to have our consultant project design project manager, Fabio Laverde, take the presentation from here. Fabio.
Thank you, Paulette. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Paulette mentioned, the project limits are from just south of Tollgate Boulevard, which is approximately mile marker 73.75, to mile marker 77.5, just at the Lignumvitae Channel Bridge. Next slide. This is what's categorized as a 3R project, which stands for resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation of the corridor. And the purpose of this project is to extend the life of the roadway, as well as to address any safety issues along the corridor. The project lies within the village of Islamorada, within Monroe County. Next slide. We are currently in the 90% design phase of the project. We're expected to finish the design in September of 2021 with an anticipated letting date of January 2022. At this time, The construction is estimated to start in April of 2022 or sometime in the spring. And its expected duration is approximately 18 months with an end date of October 2023. And this is estimated as well at this time. Right now, the project cost is approximately $12.4 million. Next slide. Now, a quick overview of the scope. The intent of this project is to repave and restripe both the travel lanes along the corridor as well as the shoulders. We will also be raising the roadway and shoulders from approximately mile marker 73.9 to approximately mile marker 76 to address sea level rise. We will also be improving the drainage along the segment. I'm sure most of you have seen the ongoing construction adjacent to Sea Oaks Beach, which is reconfiguring the revetment system. As a result of raising the roadway, we will also be tying into that new system that's being constructed now. We will also be upgrading the signing and the pavement markings along the segment and upgrading bicycle features along selected locations of the shared use path, specifically the crossing locations. In addition, we will be providing audible and vibratory pavement markings along the edge lines and center lines of the roadway. Next slide. This is the existing typical section along the corridor, which we will maintain as part of this project. We currently have two 12-foot travel lanes, one in the northbound direction and one in the southbound direction, with turn lanes at intermittent locations. We have a 10-foot northbound paved shoulder and a 5-foot southbound paved shoulder. Along the bay side or the west side of the corridor, we also have the existing Florida Keys Overseas Heritage Trail. That is outside of FDOT right-of-way for the majority of the project, but it does lie within the segment. Next slide. And this is just an overview of what is currently taking place at Sea Oaks Beach. As you can see, the section in brown is what's currently under construction. The construction team is currently introducing the new articulated concrete block system adjacent to Sea Oaks Beach. And as a result of us raising the roadway, we're going to be going ahead and tying into that with another layer of articulated concrete block to tie down to the proposed roadway elevations. Next slide. And I'll just briefly walk you through the project segment. As I mentioned, the project starts just south of Tollgate Boulevard. This is where we're going to start transitioning up to achieve the desired elevations between mile marker 73.9 and 76, where we're raising the roadway. As you can see, we're also going to be upgrading the signing as well as the pavement markings. Next slide. As we head north, we start approaching the area adjacent to Sea Oaks Beach, where we're going to be tying into the articulated concrete block that's currently under construction. As you can see on the west side of the corridor, that's the area where we have a lot of swale area. So these are the locations where we're going to be providing exfiltration trenches and drainage inlets to capture the runoff from the State Road 5 roadway. Next slide. Just north of Sea Oaks Beach, same thing. We're still raising the roadway in this section, addressing pavement markings and signage improvements, as well as drainage improvements between the frontage road and the State Road 5 facility within the swale areas. Next slide. More of the same here. I would also like to point out that as a result of raising the roadway, we're also going to be addressing impacts to driveways. We're going to have to be harmonizing at some of those locations. The harmonization will take place within FDOT right-of-way. We do not anticipate having to go into anybody's property to address the harmonization. So wanted to point that out as well. Next slide. And then as you can see here, where the color of the pavement changes to a lighter color, this is essentially the location where we're going to be transitioning down to match existing. And from this point forward, The intent is strictly to mill and resurface the existing pavement, matching the existing elevations. Next slide. And here, again, more of the same here. We're just going to be milling and resurfacing and replacing any signs, pavement markings, and any swale areas that we're going to be resodding. Next slide. And lastly, through coordination with the village of Isla Morada, we will also be addressing some frontage road improvements to the access road leading into Robbie's. We understand that there's been some issues with accessibility and maneuverability issues getting into and out of that frontage road. So as part of this project, we will be widening the frontage road to improve access to that frontage road, or that access road to Robbie's. Now, what to expect during construction? The goal here is to maintain the existing travel lanes during construction during the daytime. So we will always have one lane in each direction during daytime. We will need to provide temporary lane closures in order to build the project specifically as it relates to paving the corridor, but that will be restricted to nighttime work from 9:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. and we will be doing that with flagging operations. That would be the only activity, construction activity that will be permitted at night, in addition to striping of the corridor. And given that this is a high-speed facility, we will also ensure that all milled surfaces are paved prior to opening to traffic the next day. Now, the existing posted speed along the segment, for the majority of the segment, is 55 miles per hour, and that will remain. I do want to point out that at nighttime, given the fact that we will have flagging operations, obviously operating speeds will be reduced. As far as pedestrians and cyclists are concerned, any shared use path closures will be provided with temporary detours to ensure connectivity and continuity during construction for pedestrians and cyclists. And we understand how important special events are in the Florida Keys, so we will ensure that no work is allowed during any special events. Now, dust, noise, and access are obviously things that we need to consider during construction. Our plans will ensure that the contractor is required to water and sweep after each workday in order to minimize any construction-related dust. Noise abatement is also important. That's why we're going to be limiting the work to milling and resurfacing at night only to try to limit any noise disturbance at night. And as far as access, for standard specifications, businesses and property access will be maintained at all times during construction. And that concludes the presentation, and I will hand it over to Paulette now.
Thank you so much, Fabio. Now we've reached the question and answer portion of our presentation tonight. We ask that you please submit your comments in the question box. After addressing comments in the question box, we will open the microphones. If we're unable to answer your question, the project team will provide a written response after the meeting, so no need to worry about that. If you would like to speak, please press the raise your hand button. Again, that's on the control panel on the upper right hand corner of your screen. Or your handheld device. Participants will have about 3 minutes, as I mentioned, to provide comments and questions to allow others in which to speak. And staff will be available to answer questions in the order that they were received and as time permits. If your question is not responded to, not to worry, it will be responded to and you would be provided a response following tonight's meeting. I would like to ask, however, if any of our elected or appointed officials or their representatives have anything that they would like to say at this time. And if so, again, please press the raise your hand button on your side panel in your upper right hand corner. Not seeing where we're having Any of the attendees? Okay, so we don't have any elected officials or their representatives that would like to make any comments at this time. If you do have a question, again, please be sure to click your raise your hand button. I see that we have 2 attendees at the moment. And team, I'm going to go ahead and read those questions at the moment. First of all, I would like to acknowledge again the Mayor of Monroe County, Michelle Coldiron, that is attending our meeting tonight. Mr. Robert Moser does have a question, and his question is as such. Upgrading roadway signage and pavement markings. Can you please put in Anns Beach, 1 mile ahead signage at Sea Oats Beach? Thank you. Team Fabio, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, sure. Yeah, Mr. Moser, I believe that's something that you had expressed an interest in last time we met, and it's something that we are coordinating currently with the Department of Traffic Operations, and we will be reaching out to the village as well on that to see if it's something that could be implemented as part of this project.
Thank you so much, Fabio. And yes, we are familiar with Mr. Moser. Thank you so much for attending. I do have a question, a raised hand from Ms. Barbara Edgar. Ms. Edgar, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Could you go ahead, Ms. Edgar? You may still have yourself self-muted, Ms. Edgar.
Paulette, I think she might be experiencing some technical. Oh, is she on?
I am not hearing her.
I will go ahead and send her a chat message to assist her, okay?
Okay, please. Thank you so much, Miranda. Okay, we have another question. Mr. Ross Margolis has his hand raised. Mr. Margolis? I'm going to go ahead. Oh, you're welcome.
Yes, we've had a bit of a dialogue on part of my question. I have a 2-part question. Can you guys elaborate? So, I mean, I know you showed a slide on it, but I didn't pick everything up. Can you elaborate on how the drainage is going to work around in the area around mile marker 75? And then secondly, where you're raising the highway, how is access to the access roads and homes going to work? Because 2 feet is a lot in those spaces. Are you building a ramp or something? You touched on it, but I didn't follow the explanation.
Okay, absolutely. I'm going to have Fabio answer that question for you.
If you don't mind, Paulette, can you take us to that section? It's just north of.
Which one of your plan sheets is it, Fabio?
Keep going to the next one.
Sure.
No, go back. I'm sorry. Go back.
Okay.
Back. Back. It's right there. Okay.
Okay.
It's actually the bottom pane.
Oh, the bottom one. Okay.
Okay, so perfect. So in this location in specific, we understand that the frontage road is flooding specifically during king tide. What we're doing as part of this project, as you can see here, we have in this specific area, like between station 108 to station 113 roughly, we have very limited swale area. So what we're doing there is we're providing a shoulder gutter in order to capture all the runoff from the FDOT right-of-way and discharge that into exfiltration trenches within the swale areas. Now this is gonna obviously improve the current condition because right now everything is sheet flowing and running off into the frontage road and into that green area. But what we're doing to capture the runoff from the FDOT roadway is we're now collecting the runoff along a gutter in that specific location and sending it to exfiltration trenches.
Can
Now,
you
as far
explain
as
I'm just going to interrupt one question. Can you explain what an exfiltration trench is?
it's basically an underground piping system with rocks, which allows the water to percolate into the existing ground.
Okay, thank you.
So, you know, there will be some sort of an improvement, but I do want to point out that the flooding experience along the frontage road will still be there after the construction of this project.
Okay, thank you. And I will try to follow up with the village on that. I wanted to wait until after I heard your explanation. And then the second part is, if my memory is correct, the highway is going to be elevated about 2 feet from where it is right now in this area?
In this area, we're looking more at about 1.5 feet. And then we're going to be touching down with like 1 to 6 to 1 to 4 roadside slopes, which average about 5 feet from the existing edge of pavement.
Okay, so 1 to 6 to 1 to 4 is the ratio of length to, height to length?
Correct.
Looks like, okay, great. Thank you. That explains both things. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Let's see if we can get Mr. Mark Gregg. I believe he has a question. Mr. Gregg?
Yes, I also typed in some questions. I'm very concerned about the turtle nesting area, not only with your proposed project, but with the current project. That is a historic turtle nesting area that was damaged by Hurricane Irma. I'm not sure how much nesting area is left there, but can you share some information or some insight on what can be done to not only protect turtles there, but to hopefully restore the nesting area that was there that may be impacted by your work?
We're currently in the process of going through environmental permitting with South Florida Water Management and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Based on our initial conversations, you know, one of the things we're looking at, and through coordination with the village of Alamorada, is we're going to be adding a guardrail. We understand that the village is currently utilizing silt fences to try to mitigate turtles from crossing the road. So by us adding a guardrail, it may provide the village an opportunity in the future to go with, I guess, a more permanent feature than the current silt fence that they're utilizing today. But right now, as I mentioned, the project is under design, and we are currently coordinating with Fish and Wildlife and South Florida Water Management District.
What if anything is being done to protect turtles from entering the highway for the upcoming nesting season, which is going to begin next month?
As far as what's happening next month, I'm not really sure. I know the village in the past has been providing silt fences. I'm not sure if that's what they're going to be doing now or not. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have more information on that.
Am I interpreting that you're asking, or you're suggesting that it's the village's duty or responsibility there?
What I'm saying is that in the past, you know, based on coordination with the village, they've indicated to us that that's what they've been doing. I'm not claiming it's their responsibility. I'm just letting you know what's been done in the past.
Okay.
Fabio, I don't want to speak for the ongoing project, which is, I think, what the gentleman, Mr. Mark, is referring to. But any environmental protection actions that would need to be taken into consideration were probably part of the permit conditions for the ongoing project from the U.S. Army Corps and South Florida Water Management District. So any sea turtle protections that would have been required in order to construct the project are probably identified on those permits. And I think that's something that, you know, probably the question needs to be asked. We would need to, refer them to the appropriate people that are working on that project. But basically, the Army Corps, the Keys Marine Sanctuary and South Florida would not have issued a permit without, proper conditions in place, and that will be captured on the construction documents for that ongoing project. And, and I also want to point out that with our project, I think if you go to the typical section page, Paulette, which is 14, I want to reiterate the fact that the project that is ongoing is building that articulated concrete block, and they are doing work within the water, and they are going into the mean high water line. I think it's the next one. Next.
No, there.
Yeah. Like Fabio said, what's shown here in brown is what's being built by the current project, which does go into below the current mean high water line. But our proposed project is basically going to be tying into that. So the upcoming project that will raise the road is going to have less impacts on that sealed beach side, because most of that, the big excavation for the tow is going to be built by the time we come in, and we're tying in at the top of the berm. So it's a little bit different. Just wanted to.
The design that you show doesn't really, from my perspective, doesn't really allow much space for a turtle to crawl out and lay eggs. In fact, it pretty much prevents that, and so does the open cell concrete tiles or blocks that you're putting there. In other words, before Irma, there was plenty of room for turtles to lay eggs there, and sometimes they even hatched and crawled under the highway. But now it looks like a total barrier. So it appears that we've completely lost the turtle nesting area. What am I missing?
Well, sir, again, I don't want to speak for the ongoing project. But all of this is being coordinated with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, with the Marine Sanctuary, with South Florida Water Management District, and the necessary precautions are being put in place. And the permit, basically the permits that have been issued and the permits that will be issued will have conditions with regards to the turtles protection.
I don't have any further questions. I think I've pretty much exhausted your resources. I appreciate that I need to pursue this with the Army Corps and so forth, but I'm just saying out loud in practical terms, where the hell are the turtles going to lay the eggs? There's nothing there. That doesn't seem right. And I appreciate that other agencies are going to have to, they review this and they approve it, but current construction is going to go on, is continuing right through the nesting season. It's solid concrete along the shoreline that used to be sand. I mean, if you're telling me that that's how it got permitted, that's fine. I'll look into that. But it just seems really irresponsible from an environmental perspective. You don't have to agree or disagree. I understand. I'm just making a comment. I see you smiling. It's okay. But, turtles are very important in the Keys, and as they are everywhere. But this project doesn't appear to address that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment, Mr. Gregg. We really do appreciate it.
I would like to make a quick comment.
Okay, sure, Umberto, go ahead.
As our team explained, we do not have really knowledge of the current project of the construction. That was a result of the Irma, which affected the road immensely there. So the funding for Irma came and had to be used to restore not only that area, but all there is along the beach, along the seaside, the ocean side. And so that's why this project is coming before ours. So we don't really have any involvement in that restoration project. We will find out. They went through all the necessary permits to build this protection. But also, I just want to bring to the table that there is another plan and another project for the U.S. Corps of Engineers to do restoration of the beach restoration there, because basically the truth is that the beach there have eroded, basically disappeared. Not only because of what DOT is building now to protect the shore and to protect the road, but also because the beach has been eroding and there is basically no beach there now. So I know the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the village of Isla Morada is aware of that too. They have a plan to do a beach restoration and not only in that area, but of a lot of areas along the Atlantic. So so I recommend you that yes, you should. We are gonna go investigate. We're gonna find out more for you, and we give you the information we have regarding this project. And but also we will have to check with U.S. Corps of Engineers, because again they have a big plan for beach restoration in that area too.
I'm encouraged by your reference to a restoration plan. I appreciate that. I'm not attacking you. I'm just upset that turtles are getting disregarded here. I'm also aware of the severe erosion there. When I was a teenager, I used to pull my car off there. There was a billboard that I guess it would be in the water now, but there was a long, wide space there, and you could go along there and have a good time and walk along the shoreline. That's all gone. And so I just wanted, and the sand that was there before Irma was piled up across the highway for a long time and then trucked away to God knows where. That should have been put back over there. So I know turtles can only nest in a certain specific kind of sand. It's very, you can't just put any sand there. The eggs won't hatch if you don't put the right sand in there. So maybe I'm telling you stuff you don't need to know to build a road, but hopefully if the opportunity arises for you to engage with the restoration folks and that is incorporated into your plans, that would be all I could ask you for at this time. But turtles are very, very important, not just to crazy officials like me, but everybody down here loves turtles. And this is the one place where they could be, you could see them, you knew the nests were there, you could go out there and watch them hatch sometimes. It was a wonderful thing. And this seems to be destroying that. So there's going to be more people than me that are upset about it if that's a permanent condition. So I'll keep my, I'll remain alert for the restoration project. And if you have any information, forward that to the village so we can spread that information out to give folks hope that the turtle nesting will come back. So thank you for your attention to that and your interest in it. I know you're concerned like me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I see that Council Member Mark Gregg has his hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute him.
That was me. I'm done. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, Council Member Gregg. Mr. David Webb also has his hand raised. Mr. Webb, I'm going to unmute you at this time.
Thank you. My question has more to do with the analysis that was taken to arrive at the proposal that's before us here. It's going to be a huge project. It's going to be very expensive. And at the beginning, it was at least alluded to that one of the primary reasons to raise the road was to deal with sea level rise. My question is, how was the level arrived at that the road is going to be raised, and are there projections by the Department of Transportation about how long it will be before it has to be raised again? I'm not an engineer, and so I'm not going to allude to any knowledge of this, but it seems to me that once the road project is started, the difference in raising it 12 inches or 18 inches to maybe 24 inches is not going to be cost prohibitive in the big projects. I just wondered how was the determination arrived at of how high the road's going to be raised, and how long do we think that's going to be sufficient before we have to do it again? Thank you.
Eileen, do you want to take this or you want me to take it?
Yeah, I can take that. So we are, so obviously these are unprecedented times we're dealing with. And as far as the projections that we're using to figure out, what infrastructure we raise or how much we raise it, it goes back to science. The best way that I could explain it to you is that There are multiple projections out there for the expected sea level rise, and those projections are basically tied to data that we already have from the Baca Key and the Key West stations, from basically what NOAA has collected over the last 50 years. What we see is that over the last 10 years, there's been an upward trend of sea level rise. So that means that the mean high water is higher every single time you get king tides or events like that. So basically we have almost this cone. It's almost like a hurricane cone of uncertainty, right? Where you have a low projection and you have a much higher projections that could range anywhere from like a foot to like 3 feet of sea level rise. So as engineers, we're basically looking at that data and we're estimating based on the project, the expected life of the project, which in this case, we're basically, FDOT revisits their projects every 20 years. They come through and they go through the project and they see whether improvements have to be made or not. So for this particular project, we used a 20-year design life. So based on that 20-year design life, which is when the next time DOT expects to come back through this corridor, we looked at that cone of projection, and basically we're going with the average projection that will be like right in the middle of that cone of projection, which is an intermediate NOAA projection, which is about 1.7 feet of sea level rise from the current mean high water. After we determined that, hey, we want to design the project to basically meet that 1.7 feet of sea level rise, we looked at the entire corridor and figure out what portions of the corridor are below that elevation or will be affected by that elevation. And that's how we get to the conclusion that 3 miles of this 6-mile corridor, 7-mile corridor needs to be raised above that elevation so that we can protect the infrastructure. So that's basically, in a nutshell, how we arrived to the conclusion of what parts of the road will be raised and how much we will be raising it, and it's based on a 20-year life. I don't know if that answers your question.
There was a very clear explanation, and I didn't figure in that you have the projection of the lifespan before the roadway is going to have to be looked at again for serious revisions, and that's a very good explanation. Thank you for that.
Okay.
We appreciate that question. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back to Miss Barbara Edgar. She's had her hand up for a while. I'm going to see if I can unmute her. Okay, it appears that Miss Edgar is still having some issues and in terms of connectivity. We're going to see if we could have her type in her question to us, and we'd be happy to address that. Miss Maylin Gonzalez, I'm going to unmute you currently. You have a question? You may be self-muted, Miss Gonzalez. I'm going to try and unmute you again. Ms. Gonzalez? Okay, we have
Hello,
Ms.
can you hear me?
Williams. Ms. Williams, do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we most certainly can. Please go ahead.
All right. Well, my name is Sandy Williams. I live at 74.5, and I am the federally permitted beach walker for nesting sea turtles on Sea Oats Beach. And I would like to thank Mr. Gregg very much for his kind comments about the turtles, and he's absolutely right. This project has effectively eliminated any chance for turtles to nest on that beach. The project is right out into the high water line. I've been told that you are going to stop work before turtle nesting season starts, which is April 15th. But by then the beach will have been pretty much eliminated. I don't know if you have any plans to come back and remove any of that stuff in the second phase when you start tying it into the highway. But I can guarantee you that no turtles will be able to nest there given the work that has taken place at this time.
Thank you so much for your comments, Miss. I really do appreciate your comments, Miss Williams. Miss Gonzalez, do you have a comment? Okay, you appear to be self-muted. You may still be muted.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Sorry about that.
No problem. Go ahead.
So we would like to know where we can access a copy of the design documents.
Okay. Umberto or Fabio, would you like to respond?
I mean, Paulette, we can provide you with that information, and you can forward it to the gentleman.
Okay.
I just want to point out that it's not final plans yet. It's a 90% design, so there still may be some modifications, but it's good enough to get a general idea of what it is that we're doing along the segment.
Okay.
Okay.
Sir, you can always go ahead and email me directly your question or request. And I believe that might be a question for Public Records Office at this time. But again, my email address is on the screen. It's psummers@mrgmiami.com.
Okay. We also have a concern. We're homeowners on mile marker 74.5 Bayside. And at the moment, all of the storm water from US 1 is sheet flowing into the access road that's owned by the village. And it's creating an unsafe condition in various parts of the access road that's pretty significantly impacting the enjoyment of our property. And I'd like to know if this project is going to mitigate that condition and effectively provide for storm drainage and storm waters that sheet flow off of US 1.
Aline, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I believe 74.5 is around it's just south of that area we were talking about before. Paulette, can you go to sheet number 3?
Yes.
Yeah. Is this about the area that you
bottom pane? The bottom pane.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no. Yeah, you were at the top of the. I'm sorry.
I think
Yeah.
I think 74. Yeah. 74.5 is around. Okay. Yeah. So in this area, sir. Yeah. So in this area, we are, as you mentioned today, the current runoff just sheet flows off of the highway and into a very shallow shared swell with the frontage road, which is within the village's right of way. So what we're doing to mitigate the issue is we're adding swales. I don't know if you see there within the green area, there are contours. Yeah, we're adding swales that are gonna collect the runoff off of the roadway and that are gonna attenuate the runoff from the roadway in the swales. And then the swales are gonna have French drains, which is basically just a trench in the ground with a coarse aggregate material and perforated pipe that allows seepage of that water into the ground, so that the runoff is not going into the frontage road right away property. So this is gonna eliminate the DOT, this Estero 5 runoff from going into the frontage road. But I do want to point out that in this area, the frontage road is very, very low. So during times of king tide or wet season, certain times during the year, you may see because the water table is increasing and is affected by the increase in sea levels, you may see standing water that is not necessarily from runoff, but is what we call sunny day flooding, which is that it may be water that could be coming out of the ground.
Understood.
Thank you so much, Eileen.
Thank you very much for the.
You're most welcome. Let's see if we have any other questions at this time. Mr. Moser, you have your hand up again. Let's see. He may not be able to speak, so I'm going to see if I can go ahead. Team, we had that question for Mr. Moser having to do with the signage. He does have another question. Evaluating existing landscaping. Is any landscaping possible, please, between Sea Oats Beach across from gas station and the beginning of the Calusa Cove, specifically near Sunset Drive and Iroquois Drive? Thank you.
Yes, unfortunately, since this is a resurfacing project, landscaping cannot be incorporated as part of this project. That's something that would have to be done in the future as part of another project. So no, unfortunately, I mean, while we are evaluating landscaping from a safety standpoint to ensure that there's no trees within lateral offset or anything like that, unfortunately, any new plantings we will not be implementing as part of this project.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. Mr. Moser also had another question. He's asking about acquiring copies of the plan sheets. He's saying that the slides are a little illegible, so he's asking for a copy of the plan sheets, and I think that would fall along the same lines as our public request records, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have a question from a Mr. Nick Nakos. He says, approximately how high will the road be raised and how will drainage be addressed?
Again, the roadway is going to be raised on average about 1.5 feet from the existing elevation. And as far as drainage, as Eileen mentioned, we're going to be providing roadside swales, specifically on the west side of the corridor, with inlets and French drains to capture the runoff from State Road 5.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. Let's see. Mr. Joe Roth did have a similar elevation question. His question had to do with the elevation of the road post-project in relation to the base flood elevation. You had already addressed Mr. David Webb's question. Mr. Kevin O'Neill has a question, team. He's asking, will the drainage on the walking and bicycle path be improved when the road between Robbins and Sea Oats Beach is raised? He's saying currently floods there after every rain.
Okay, the raising of the roadway is going to stop at approximately mile marker 76. So the area near Robbie's, which is approximately mile marker 77, 77.5, we will not be raising the roadway in that section. The raising of the roadway will stop at mile marker 76, approximately. We will be improving the frontage road at Robbie's. We're going to be widening to improve access to that frontage road, specifically the right turn access from State Road 5 into the access road to Robbie's. So we will be doing that work, but we're going to be matching existing elevations along that segment.
Thank you, Fabio.
Keep going to the last plan sheet.
Keep going, okay. This one?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right.
So there we will be matching the existing elevation. So we will strictly be limited to milling and resurfacing there and the access improvements to the frontage road.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. Mr. Joe Roth has a question. He says, will the project necessitate moving utilities?
we would definitely require adjustments to utilities as a result of raising the roadway. So any existing manholes, valves along the segment will have to be adjusted to meet the proposed grade elevations in the future. As far as relocation of utilities, at this time, we don't anticipate any. We do understand that Florida Keys Electric is in the process of potentially relocating their utility poles along Sea Oaks Beach to the west side of the corridor. But that's a project that currently has not been funded. Last we spoke with FKEC, but it's something that is potentially in the works. It will not be part of this project, but there is a potential for relocation of those utility poles in the future. But as far as this project is concerned, it's going to be limited to utility adjustments of manholes, valves, etc.
Thank you, Fabio.
Paulette,
Yes.
I believe, I think, I don't know if it was Mr. Roth that I had the question that you read regarding the base flood elevation. I just wanted to elaborate on that. What I had answered before with regards to the raising of the road is to combat against sea level rise, which is just, you know, the everyday expected tidal fluctuation in sea level. With regards to base flood elevation, that's typically, when we talk about base flood elevation, is for the 100-year flood events for FEMA. And I don't know if the gentleman was referring to that. And I just wanted to point out that the base flood elevations for this corridor, the still water elevation ranges without tide ranges between 6.5 to 9 feet. The road is still below that. So if there is an extreme storm event, we're not raising the road enough to be above an extreme storm event. The road is being raised so that we are above the projected sea level rise for the high to low normal tide fluctuations throughout the year.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. Thank you for clarifying that.
Paulette, sorry to interrupt. I think Mr.
Yes.
O'Neill is trying to speak, so I'm just gonna go ahead and unmute him, okay?
Okay, certainly. Thank you.
No worries. Mr. O'Neill, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
Yeah, you did answer part of the question. I just want to thank Mr. Gregg and Ms. Williams for their comments about the turtles, number one, because that is we live at 74.5, and that is a concern from almost all the residents. My specific question was about the walking bicycling path between Robbie's and Sea Oaks Beach, not so much towards Robbie's because that's fairly dry, but and there was another caller that mentioned the road, the village access road is a low spot, floods often, and it does not appear to be a rising sea level thing, but a thing with whenever it rains, that water will get ankle deep or a little bit deeper, and it will go almost to the edge of the highway. So if you're walking on that path for sometimes 7 to 10 days after a heavy rainfall, you have to go out and you have to walk on the edge of Highway 5, US 1, and it's an accident waiting to happen, and I don't feel good doing it, but you know, that is my exercise for the day. So I'm wondering if this project isn't an opportunity, even though it's not in the designs now, and I'm not so sure. I've done a lot of work like this in my career. I'm retired now, but deepening and widening the swales will certainly help, and some French drains will help. But I can guarantee you right now that will not completely, not even come close to addressing the problem. And I'm wondering if there isn't an opportunity for this project to address some of those concerns, even if they have to work with the village to address, because it is their right of way, their roadway, and the walking path.
I guess to answer that, we would definitely have to coordinate with the village. I mean, our project is scheduled to complete design September of 21 of this year, and we're scheduled to let at the beginning of next year. So time is of the essence. Funding would be another matter. I mean, any work within the village right of way would have to be funded by the village. So while potentially it could be, I mean, the chances of that happening might be slim given the schedule. Because obviously, in order to address that, I mean, as Eileen mentioned earlier, that roadway is extremely low, which is the main reason, or one of the major reasons that flooding is occurring at that location. So in order to address that, in addition to providing drainage infrastructure, we would definitely need to evaluate or look into potentially raising that as well. But again, given that it's now within FDOT right of way, that's something that FDOT would not undertake. It's something that would have to be led by the village. I mean, we can definitely bring it to their attention, but unfortunately, right now, as part of this project, is not something that is being addressed.
It just seems that this might be a lost opportunity for some partnership between the state and the village, and even bringing in the county, and perhaps Mr. Gregg could help us with that line of communication. You know, it's never too late. I know you're at the 90% level, and that's pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered when you get to that level at the design stage. But I appreciate your thoughts and your comments there, and I appreciate this presentation. So I want to thank you all for that.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Mr. Moser. I believe he has his hand up. Mr. Moser?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we most certainly can. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And just a quick thank you to Paulette and Tish and Eunice for the communication back and forth, as well as everyone on the board that's that I see pictures of now, Umberto and everyone. Thank you. Besides the questions that I wrote to you, the one that I wanted to elaborate on more is this whole question that others have spoken about of the swale in the French Drain and the flooding on the west side, specifically between your markings numbers 33 and 58 on sheet 1 for the most part. I don't know that many people have spoken about that section, but we do have that bike path sidewalk that runs from the gas station, through Tollgate and Safety, and most of the time is impassable. And I'm wondering if there are any swales that can be put there, because I do not see any on the plans.
Yeah, that location there, as you can see, we have very, very limited room there. Right now there are no swales that we're proposing along this segment. We do have, minor green areas that we're going to be utilizing to capture the runoff, but we have very limited room within the right-of-way to provide swales. And as you can see in some sections, the Florida Keys Overseas Heritage Trail is almost directly adjacent to the shoulder along those areas. That specific area, we're not really raising the roadway there. That's where we're essentially transitioning down to tie back to existing. So we're almost replicating what's currently out there. We can go ahead and further evaluate the drainage at that location to see if there's anything we could do. But as you can see, we have very limited room there based on the existing conditions. The only thing I can tell you is we're trying to match what's out there currently, and we're strictly limiting what we're doing there to milling and resurfacing and transitioning up to the raising of the roadway.
Yes, thank you. And when I ask about landscaping in addition to beautification, I was hoping it was something that would suck up all of the additional runoff and help mitigate against the impacts on the wetlands along that canal area, again in sheet 1. But we've gone back and forth on an email with that. So thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Robert. Thank you so much for attending. I'm going to unmute Mr. Ross Margolis next. He does have a question or a comment. Mr. Margolis?
Thank you. I'm following up on my previous comment about mile marker 75. It's really as much as 75 and a quarter, and I'm glad that there's other people on the call around mile marker 74 and a half that are talking a bit about this flooding situation. And I want to say I raised this at the previous call, and I appreciate that this group of the Florida DOT has paid attention to that and done what you can do within your area. But I do agree with the other speaker who said this is an opportunity. It's probably the most cost-effective way to address this issue. And the safety issue is real. I didn't bring that up. I ride my bike every day. So when I get to that area, I have to go on the shoulder of the highway against traffic, and it is totally unsafe. I mean, there is no room. It's totally unpassable. There's a lot of other safety issues. And one would think, and we have people from the village, I believe, on the phone on this call, if they're still on, one would think somebody would want to address it. I also want to mention, I don't doubt Ms. Costa's explanation for why some of the flooding happens, but living there, you can see that the reason it stays there, not why it happens, the reason it stays there for a week is that it can't drain off that road. The water on the side of the road percolates through the dirt and goes and drains away. So the issue is probably partly what you mentioned, but it's also partly that you have, that you have this hard roadway that doesn't allow drainage. So as part of the solution, it seems that we want to either raise that or tilt it some way so that at least the water can be over land so it can drain as the tides go out and stuff, because it creates a bigger flooding issue because you're sitting there with sometimes 3 or 4 inches before it even starts raining. And, as you know, in our property, we're having an erosion problem as that water's actually flooding some of our beach into the bay. And I think it's unsafe. And I think that the town who we talked to them about 8-9 months ago, and they basically said they weren't going to do anything about it. But I think that they should do it because there's safety issues, there's erosion issues. And if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it, to coordinate it. This is not, one last thing, I'm not an engineer, so I'm respectful of all the engineers on this phone call or the Zoom call, but this is not unless it interacts with the project that you have in a way that you have to do a lot more. This is a relatively simple solution to make it a lot better. You might not solve 100%, but it can be made a lot better. And it can be made safer. People can't walk or bike there sometimes for a week at a time, even when there's no rain in between. And it doesn't happen anywhere else in Isla Morada from my travels up and down the beach, up and down the island to look at it. So thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, no, Mr. Margolis, I just want to clarify, I guess, that I just wanted to be absolutely transparent in the fact that, we are trying to alleviate the concerns and we are trying to do everything we can that is possible within the FDOT's right of way and within the constraints that we're working with. And we've put swales where they fit, we've added French drain where, we can put it, shoulder gutter, etc. So that we can eliminate the runoff going into the path and the villages right away. But I do also acknowledge we looked at the entire corridor and the elevations in that particular area. Now, when you started speaking, it came to mind the elevations of the path specifically and that frontage road that is asphalt within that particular area. I think I want to say are like at 1 or just below 1. And this is the North American vertical datum, which is the lowest. It's actually there's elevations of the road in there than the path that are lower than the adjacent swale. So I completely understand your concern. We're not refuting that. I think I was just trying to explain the sunny day flooding before, just in the grand scheme of things, because I don't want to misrepresent, what we're trying to do here as, fixing a situation where we're trying to do everything that we can within our right of way, but we're not necessarily fixing the entire problem, is what I was trying to explain before.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, your explanation was clear, and as I said, I think you guys have made an effort. The only extra effort I'll ask you to make is, because we're going to contact the village, is to try to work with the village to coordinate it, to make it, safe and an economic project if possible. And I understand that you're far along in your planning process, but if it's not done now, it's probably not going to be done, and that area is unpassable. So thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Margolis. Oh,
Yeah, I also believe that the issue of the path could be basically defined or determined or fixed with a different project, because you will require more than just trying to put the water here and there. You require in that area probably a more detailed analysis, because if you raise that path and you're going to be flooding your homes, so it requires a more detailed analysis than just us trying to put the water here and there. And I believe that probably the village and DOT, because this has been done in all the areas I believe in the Keys, where the path have been. I think there is a project now. I don't know if I'm mistaken, Fabio, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is another project with the path that been restored further south, and that can be done, but it has to be worked out between the village and DOT, maybe through a lab project. Also, the scope of this project limits us from getting an impact in the village right away. So solving this issue is going to take a little bit more than us. We're doing the best we can with what we have, but I know that solving this issue in the whole path will require probably a more a request from the village, work with DOT, maybe through a lab project, something like that. But this will require a further analysis than I don't think we're going to solve it within the scope of this project. But I recommend that the village to probably to work with DOT and maybe in the future putting something together, because this is I know this is an issue. We knew it from the start when we started working on the technical proposals and all that. We saw the pictures, we knew what was happening, but we also were limited because of the scope of the project.
Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Mr. Margolis. I'm going to move next to Council Member David Webb. Mr. Webb.
Thank you very much. Roberto just hit on the key issue that I wanted to revisit here. While it's true that the pathway is very low there and that it isn't village right away, the overwhelming problem is that the residential lots beyond that are even lower. So his comment about raising the pathway is accurate and spot on in the analysis of this, because all we're going to do is move more water that used to be on the pathway that comes from US 1, quite frankly, into the front yards of the homeowners on both sides of US 1 all the way up to Raleigh's. And some of those homes, especially on the south side of US 1 near Raleigh's, are already flooding now. So I'm not suggesting that this is FDOT's problem individually and solely. The problem is not from sea level rising. The problem is from the low elevation of the lots compared to the current elevation of US 1 and no drainage mitigation at all other than a blank swale. So I really would request, and I'm not speaking for the village of Alamorada, I'm just speaking for myself, but I think the village would be more than ready to try and partner in something that might provide some further mitigation. But it's going to take a bigger engineering job than just raising that pathway. All we're going to do is shift the water that comes from US 1 onto the pathway into the front yards of every homeowner along that stretch, and that's not going to be acceptable either. So I guess as a question and part of that observation, and I know that the people that are on this webinar have limited authority to do things, and I appreciate that. But what was the modeling that was done to determine what size of a swale and how deep a French drain? You know, how do you model what the projection of the runoff is going to be to even have any chance that it's going to be mitigated by the swales? And I understand that there's limitations on area, and you can't make the swale in an unlimited size. But if it would help for the village to relocate one of the edges of that path to make available a larger area for the swale, I don't know, and I don't know what would be required to do that. But I guess my question, if somebody could address it, I don't know, we're running short on time here, is what kind of modeling is done to determine the water that's coming off US 1 and determining what, if any, effect the new swales are going to have? Thank you.
You're good. I can answer that, sir. So as far as the modeling that's done, we look at 3 main storm events. We look at a 3-year storm event, we look at a 10-year, and then we look at a 25-year storm event that have various rainfall depths. And then the swales are basically sized to contain the 25-year storm event. So the swales that are being put in place and the French drain that is being put in place, it's done, we use a hydrologic and hydraulic model that's called interconnected pond routing design. It's basically an industry standard model, engineering model, or H&H model that they call it. And what we do is basically we apply a land use distribution. You know, there's a certain amount of roadway area which cannot percolate runoff, and a certain amount of area that can percolate it. And then we generate a volume of runoff that is falling on that roadway based on the projected design storm event. And basically we size the swale so that we can collect and contain that runoff that is coming off of the roadway. So the swales that are being put in place for this project have been sized to collect the runoff that is coming from that immediate adjacent roadway and to contain the runoff up to the 25-year storm event. I'm sure if you're with the villages, I mean, we have engineering reports that basically go through all of the calculations. We have the models available. So I'm sure if you make a records request to the department through an email to Paulette, like we had talked about before, just the same as with the plans, we would be able to share those reports with you, and then the information contained in those models as well.
Thank you. Am I correct that there are no swales of that design anywhere along this stretch currently?
So no, so within the stretch that is showing up on the screen, is that what you're asking about?
The entire project stretch, are there any improved, for lack of a better term, are there any improved swales that have French drains currently anywhere along the section of US 1 where the work is going to be done?
Yeah, so we have introduced swales within sections of the road that are being raised, and I want to say, Paulette, they start on the following. There's mostly from just south of north of mile marker 74 to mile marker 76, Fabio. I want to say 70. Give me 1 minute.
That's correct. It's mile marker 76.1 approximately.
Yeah.
My question is, though, currently, the way that everything exists today, there are no improved, am I correct in saying there are no swales that have those kinds of French drains and improvements currently?
No, sir. Yeah, currently no. The only thing that we did a record search of all the previous projects that have come through here, and the only thing we found is that in the past, trenches had been dug up. So basically like a 4-foot deep trench had been dug up with, on some of the swales, not everywhere, but like a 4x4 trench had been dug up in the past and filled with a coarse aggregate that would allow for more percolation of the water, but there were no swales per se shaped to basically collect and retain that runoff. So this project will be providing that improvement where we are collecting the runoff from the roadway in the future condition. Yeah.
I know you have to be very careful not to misrepresent what this will accomplish, but to a layman, any addition of these, what I'll term as an improved swale with the French drains in it, is going to make a significant difference, because I don't believe there's anything like that now. And these problems don't come from 25-year rains. They come from the thunderstorm that's going to come 2 weeks from now. And again, there is an issue with the lot elevations all along that stretch on both sides, where the residences are actually lower in elevation than even the right of way that the village has control over. So thank you. If there is anything that we could do to increase either the amount of these improved swales along that area, if it requires coordination with the village and participation by the village, I would urge you to let us know that if there's something that we can do, so that we can get our engineers looking at it and decide whether that's something that we can do or not. I wouldn't support anything that's just going to move the problem to the front yard of the residents there, because that's counterproductive. But if there's other ways that the village can participate to enhance even these improvements, what I think is going to be substantial, please let us know. We will reach out to you officially. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Council Member. Really appreciate it. I'm going to move next to Miss Judy Hull. She's with the Alamorada Chamber of Commerce. Judy.
My question has been answered. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Judy. I appreciate it. Okay, Miss Sue Miller has her hand up. Miss Miller, I'm going to unmute you.
My question is related to the decision to increase the elevation of the road based on sea level rise and not take into consideration the problem that we have when we have tropical storms and hurricanes, and the problems that those present on an area that has one road in and one road out, and 75,000 residents that could be isolated if the road is washed out in a hurricane.
Yeah, so Fabio.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things, so with the raising of the road, obviously FDOT is also trying to protect the infrastructure. That is why the articulated block is being put back by the ongoing project, and that is why there is an additional articulated concrete block that will be put in based on the details that we had shown you before. I think it's page 14, Paulette, of the presentation. In here, unfortunately, the entire island is basically, most of the entire island is basically below the base flood elevation for a still water condition on the Atlantic side, which is, I think, the projected 100-year storm. I actually have them. Give me 1 minute, I can pull them up. I have, I looked at the 10-year, like you said, the 3-year storms, like the typical, storms that you would get more frequently, all the way to the more strenuous events. And basically what we're seeing is that most of the island is at or below those projected base flood elevations without accounting for the effects of tidal. So those are basically just still water. So one of the reasons why that articulated block is being put in, it's so that when the water does rise and it may get above the roadway doesn't wash out when the water recedes and the tide is beating on it. I think we saw some of that happen during Irma, where there's some sections of the road that were not necessarily protected. And there were sections of the road that eroded. So there were some things that were put in place in here to hopefully prevent that from happening again. I believe right now the scope is not, we can't really necessarily raise the road above the base flood elevations, because that would be disproportionate in comparison to the adjacent properties. But we are putting in measures in place to protect the infrastructure so that it doesn't wash out if there's an extreme storm event. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
You're most welcome, Ms. Miller. Ms. Karen Brinson has a question. Ms. Brinson? Ms. Brinson, are you there? Okay, I'm going to move on to Mr. Kevin O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill? I believe you're self-muted.
Yes, you answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I see that Miss Sandy Williams has her hand up. Did we address your questions or concerns, Miss Williams? I'm going to unmute you. Miss Williams, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, when I spoke before, there really weren't any comments from anyone, so I thought I would come back with the form of a question. Are there any plans in any phase of this project to attempt to return the beach to its more natural state where turtles can nest once again?
Yes, as part of this project, as Eileen mentioned earlier, most of the work is going to be done above ground, above the high water elevation. We're going to be tying into the articulated concrete block that's currently under construction. And as our project manager Humberto mentioned, the Army Corps is currently looking at the potential for some work along this coastline, along Sea Oats Beach. And it's something that we will continue to coordinate with them to find out what their future plans are. But as part of this project, we will only be connecting to what is currently being done as part of the ongoing construction.
And you still plan on wrapping this up by the middle of March?
December is when it's the anticipated. I'm not sure if you're referring to the project that's under construction or this design project.
The project that's under construction on Sea Oats Beach. Will that be completed by the middle of March before turtle nesting season begins?
Maybe Anthony can help with that because we don't know exactly the schedule, construction schedule there.
Well, I was told that since it's federally mandated for no work to be done during turtle nesting season, that you had plans to be done by the time turtle nesting season began.
Give us a second. We're trying to find the answer out for you. We're contacting that project team. Unfortunately, we're working on the design of this project, so we don't have the information for the ongoing construction project, but Paulette is working on getting that date for you as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Williams. I really do appreciate you following up. I'm going to work very, very closely with the project team on getting that information for you. The estimated completion date of that project in question that has to do with that embankment washout and existing shoulder pavement repairs is September 2021. So based on your question or your concerns, again, allow me to just get back to you either at the end of this meeting tonight or sometime during the day tomorrow once I've had an opportunity to discuss with the project team.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tomorrow would be fine.
Okay, you're most welcome. Okay, do we have any other questions or concerns at this moment? It is currently 7:05 p.m. I'm just asking if we have any other questions or concerns for the project team. Not seeing anybody else with their hands up at the moment. Mr. O'Neill, okay, he took his hand down. Okay, all right, team, I think at the moment we have addressed all of the questions or concerns. I know some of them have been overlapping, but grateful for the fact that we were able to cover them and to address, concerns currently. So at this time, we have actually reached the end of our project meeting. I am going to leave my information up for just another minute or two while we close out. This is the information here. Again, I'm the Community Outreach Specialist. I can be reached at 786-510-3921. My email address is psummers@mrgmiami.com. Project information can also be obtained at the project website at www.fdotmonroe.com. And you can also acquire additional information on the project by using your smartphone or device to scan the QR code below to obtain additional information on the project, as well as this presentation for the record. So at this time, we've reached the end of our meeting. On behalf of the entire project team, I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending this virtual public meeting for the State Road 5 Overseas Highway from south of Tollgate Boulevard to Lignumvitae Channel project, FI number 443893-1-52-01. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Bye.